Te llamo y te voy a hacer una propuesta que no vas a poder rechazar. Te veo bien. Suerte.
One of the saddest days in the history of football, the farewell nobody ever wanted to see, without nothing. Where were the words of eternal love? Where was the board when he needed them the most? Messi didn't leave. He was pushed out, forced away with financial excuses. Let's begin. In August of 2021, the entire world stopped. The kid who arrived from Rosario's disbelief. And while the world tried to understand what had just happened, one question floated in the air. Why? Why did Messi have to leave, if he didn't want to? To understand it, we have to go back in time. Almost a decade back, to the year 2014, to the exact moment when one man changed the destiny of Football Club Barcelona forever. His name, Josep Maria Bartomeu. January 2014, Josep Maria Bartomeu takes command of Football Club Barcelona, an interim president, a temporary replacement, or at least that's what it seemed. He inherits a jewel, a dream team. Messi, Neymar, Suarez, Iniesta, Piqué, Busquets, a locker room full of legends. With Luis Enrique on the bench, Barca touches the sky. League, Cup, champions, the treble, the MSN makes history. The world bows at their feet. But that success was the beginning of the end. Because once you taste power, you want to keep it. And in the following elections, he was no longer interim. Now he truly commanded. And that was when the decline began. The legends were beginning to leave. Xavi left, then Dani Alves. The team was aging, and the signings never came. Barca needed to rebuild its backbone, but Bartomeu didn't react. The MSN held the team together, but it was no longer enough. The rest simply weren't at the level anymore. Meanwhile, Real Madrid dominated Europe, champions in 2014, 2016, 2017, and Barca, eliminated again and again. Like in 2016, against Atletico de Madrid, a hard blow, but not the last one. Because in 2017, Juventus humiliated them in the quarter-finals, another elimination, another hit to Barca's identity. And right after that, the unthinkable happened. First, Neymar left, the most promising signing since Ronaldinho, the heir, pure destabilizing talent, the one who could eventually take the baton from Messi someday. He left for €222 million to PSG, the most expensive sale in history, and with it, the MSN broke. Europe's most feared attacking trio broke. Barca broke. Bartomeu let him go. Without fighting, without convincing him, without protecting the project. Was it about money? About feeling in Messi's shadow? Or because the club no longer had direction? We don't know. What we do know is that Neymar left because Barca was no longer what it promised to be. And while Paris celebrated, in Barcelona, the fire began. Then Luis Enrique left, the coach who took them to glory in 2015, the one who knew how to manage egos, unite talent, and build an unstoppable team. The one who still had a squad capable of winning. But he left, quietly, without public scandals, but with many unanswered questions. Tiredness, clashes with the board, internal exhaustion. No one knows for sure. What is known is that his departure left the club without leadership, without a compass, without a project. And that's when the internal fracture began to show. Bartomeu wasn't looking for strong-minded coaches. He wanted obedience, he wanted silence, he wanted control. The locker room was divided. Decisions were being made from offices disconnected from football, and the team began losing more than matches. It was losing its identity, losing respect, losing its soul. And while Neymar was landing in Paris, Messi was left alone, with the pressure of holding up an empire that was collapsing, with the responsibility of keeping alive an identity that others had already sold. Bad decisions, senseless deals. Coutinho for 145 million, Dembele for 130, Griezmann for 120. Money wasted, identity lost. What was once a respected sporting model turned into financial chaos. The club that taught the world how to win with humility was now drowning in debt, egos, and corruption. And while the Camp Nou offices were burning, there was only one person holding everything together: Lionel Messi. The number 10, the captain, the last thread keeping the Barça dream alive. While the world was falling apart, he kept scoring goals. He kept winning Ballon d'Ors. He kept making millions believe that Barça still had a soul. But everything has a limit. Until one day, it exploded. Year 2018. Barça reached the Champions League quarter-finals with a comfortable lead. 4-1 against Roma. Everything seemed under control. But at the Olympico, the absurd happened. A historic comeback. A shameful elimination. 3-0. Without soul. Without reaction. Without football. It was no longer about goals. It was a lack of identity. Messi was holding the team together, making the difference. But the damage was already done. The locker room was broken. The project crumbling. Barça was weak, and Messi was playing practically alone. A year later, in 2019, it seemed like something was coming back. The team started to believe again. Messi was in God mode. They crushed Liverpool 3-0 at the Camp Nou. The sixth Champions League felt close. Messi gave everything. Every drop of sweat, every pass, every goal was for the badge. But then came Anfield, and with it, the cruelest moment of the year. 4-0 at the hands of Liverpool. A thrashing, a humiliation. Barça was out again, without football, without soul, with players whose pockets were full but who contributed absolutely nothing, and the club drowning in debt. Messi, serious, sad, walking alone across the field at Anfield, began to break, to realize that the project wasn't working, that Barça was no longer what it promised to be. Summer 2020, the darkest year, the year Barça hit rock bottom. It all began with a decision that shocked the football world. Josep Maria Bartomeu hired Quique Setién as Barcelona's new coach. A coach with no titles, no experience in big clubs, a name no one expected. Not even him. During his presentation, Setién admitted that Barça's call surprised him, because at that moment he was out in the field, herding his cows. Yes, literally.
Ayer estaba paseando al lado de las vacas allí en mi pueblo y hoy estoy en la ciudad deportiva del Fútbol Club Barcelona entrenando a los mejores jugadores del mundo.
That's how unbelievable everything was. The biggest club in the world, in the hands of a president who no longer sought excellence, but obedience. Barça no longer signed top coaches, no longer pursued ambitious projects. They just patched things up, improvised, and the result was catastrophic. The pandemic hit the world, and Barça was destroyed from the inside. No fans, no soul, no direction. And then came the most humiliating day in its modern history. 8-2 against Bayern Munich. It wasn't just a defeat, it was a football massacre, an open wound in the pride of an entire club. The images still hurt. Messi looking down at the ground, helpless, while the Germans celebrated without mercy. That day, something inside him broke. He had endured years of empty promises, failed projects, and absurd decisions. But that night was the limit. Days later, the entire world shook with unthinkable news. Messi sent a burofax to Football Club Barcelona. Yes, the number 10, the captain, the eternal symbol, was asking to leave. And it wasn't about money or football. It was about dignity, because he felt the project no longer worked with him. Messi wanted to escape the chaos, the lies, the president who had destroyed everything he loved. Josep Maria Bartomeu responded coldly, "You can only leave if you pay your clause, 700 million euros. 700 million, an impossible number, a prison disguised as a contract." Messi couldn't believe it. The club of his life was holding him by force. Barça was no longer his home, it was his prison. Days passed, lawyers, meetings, and in the end, Leo made a decision that broke his heart.
Y bueno, ese es el motivo por el cual voy a seguir en el club, porque él me dijo que la única manera de salir era pagar la cláusula, que eso es imposible obviamente, y si no, ir a juicio. Y ir a juicio es una locura. Yo nunca iría a juicio contra el club al cual amo, al cual me dio todo.
And with that, the case was closed, at least on paper. Because even though Messi kept wearing the Blaugrana shirt, even though he kept scoring goals and lifting trophies, his heart was no longer there. That day, something broke forever. Messi stayed physically, but emotionally, he had already left Barça. And then, on August 19, 2020, the hero of Wembley returned to the Camp Nou, Ronald Koeman. The defender who lifted the club's first Champions League in 1992, the man of the eternal goal. Now he returned, as coach. But he didn't arrive for glory. He arrived out of urgency, out of necessity, out of desperation. The club was burning. The locker room was broken. Messi wanted to leave, and Bartomeu needed a shield. Koeman accepted the challenge, with character, with firmness, with the promise to rebuild what others had destroyed. October 2020. The club was on the verge of collapse. The empty stands of the Camp Nou no longer hid the noise of discontent. Protests in the streets, banners against the board, chants of Bartomeu resign, echoing in every corner of Barcelona. The relationship between the president and the fans was unsustainable. The relationship between Bartomeu and Messi, irreparable. And then, after months of pressure, scandals and internal chaos, Bartomeu resigns. He steps down, leaves the position cornered by the anger of the members and the shame of a disastrous administration. But his fall did not come alone. It carried with it a scandal that stained the club's history even further, Barçagate. An investigation revealed that Bartomeu's board had hired companies dedicated to strengthening and improving the image of the president and his board, while damaging and undermining the reputations of people who opposed them. Yes. Fake messages, dirty campaigns, targeted posts against Messi, Piqué, and other locker room idols. The club divided. The locker room broken. Trust destroyed. And then he fell. Josep Maria Bartomeu, the man who led Barça for years, ended up in handcuffs, detained along with his trusted men, Oscar Grau, Gomez Ponti, and Jaume Masferrer. They spent the night in the holding cells of the Mossos d'Esquadra station on Travessera de les Corts. The former president of Barcelona locked up, not for football, for corruption. The scandal was no longer sporting. It was institutional. It was ethical. It was moral. With Bartomeu gone, it seemed like the hell had ended. But the reality was different. The situation was still disastrous. Ronald Koeman didn't fit in the locker room. The players weren't up to the task. The team was broken. No football, no soul, no leadership. And then, another humiliation arrived. Champions League, round of 16. The rival, Mbappe's PSG. At the Camp Nou, Barça was crushed. 1-4. Mbappe did whatever he wanted. A hat-trick on Catalan soil. Barça didn't react. Koeman had no answers. In the second leg, in Paris, Messi gave everything. He scored a screamer, missed a penalty, ran, fought, believed, but he was alone. The team didn't support him. It was the breaking point. The moment everyone understood that Barça was no longer competitive. It was a giant without a soul, a locker room without direction. And yet, something unexpected happened. Barça won the Copa del Rey, a brilliant final against Athletic Club. Messi smiled, played like in his best days, lifted the trophy with a joy that seemed real. But deep down, we all knew it was fragile, an illusion, one last spark in the middle of the darkness. And then, March 2021 arrived, presidential elections. Hope returned to the Camp Nou, and with it, a name that sparked nostalgia, Joan Laporta. The president of the glorious days, the man who had watched Messi grow, who lived through the Ronaldinho era, the beginning of Guardiola, the magic of the best Barça in history. Laporta returned with a promise as powerful as it was dangerous. If I'm elected, Messi stays.
M'aprofitaré una mica i intentar convèncer el Leo que es quedi, per exemple. Aquestes són coses que s'han de fer, són decisions que faré tot el que pugui. Però bueno, el que faci estarà bé. Però nosaltres intentarem doncs, que continuï perquè és el millor jugador de la història.
The members believed him. Number 10 did too. For the first time in a long time, excitement returned to the Camp Nou. It seemed like the worst was over. It seemed like the cycle was about to close with a happy ending. But what no one knew was that the real tragedy hadn't even begun. June 2021. Lionel Messi's contract with Barcelona comes to an end. After more than 20 years, for the first time in his life, Leo was a free agent. But no alarms were triggered. There was no concern, no fear. Because Joan Laporta, the new president, had said it with complete confidence. Relax, everything is settled. We just have to sign. The city slept peacefully. The fans dreamed of the imminent announcement. Messi, for his part, was enjoying the sweetest summer of his life. In Brazil, he had achieved what he had always sought, winning the Copa America with Argentina. Finally, glory with his national team, the title that freed him, that made him smile again. And after the celebration, he returned to Barcelona. With his wife, his children, and a certainty in his heart, he was going to sign his renewal. But something didn't add up. The days went by, and the silence became deafening. There were no photos, no statements, no announcement, only rumors, confusion, and an uncomfortable feeling, as if something was about to break again. Until the truth came to light. Barca was in ruins. The club's finances were a disaster. Debts exceeded €1 billion. The wages were above the allowed limit. And even though Messi had agreed to earn half, yes, 50% less, not even then could they register him. La Liga's financial fair play rules were clear. Not even playing for free could he stay. As absurd as it sounded, as much as he wanted to, the law did not allow it. To keep him, Laporta would have needed to get rid of more than 15 players, cut half the locker room, sacrifice the entire team for one man. And even though that man was Messi, the economic reality left no room. The dream of his renewal, the "we just need to sign," turned into silence, into lost looks, into broken promises. The story was about to end, and the ending already felt inevitable. Thursday, August 5, 2021. An ordinary day, until it wasn't. At exactly 1:33 p.m., Football Club Barcelona posted a simple tweet. Breaking news, Leo Messi will not continue with Barcelona. 9 words. Just 9 words that shattered millions of hearts. The world froze. Social media exploded. The press stopped. And in Barcelona, the silence became deafening. Nobody could believe it. The same Laporta who had promised he would stay was now announcing he was leaving. No prior press conference. No farewell. No warning. Just a statement. Cold. Dry. Final. The Messi will not continue felt like a gunshot. In the bars, people weren't talking. They just stared at the screens. In the streets, some cried. Others yelled, "This can't be happening. They lied to us." And they were right. Because Messi's goodbye wasn't a decision, it was abandonment. The club that was supposed to protect him left him alone. Laporta spoke the next day. He tried to justify it. He said financial fair play made it impossible, that there was no way, that they had done everything they could. But in his eyes, there was something else. Guilt, doubt, fear. Messi, meanwhile, stayed silent. At home with his family, trying to process the impossible. 20 years, 778 goals, 35 titles. Everything ended with a tweet. That day, Barca lost more than a player. It lost its symbol, its essence, its soul. And even if the badge remained, the heart of the club, the one that beat with the number 10, had stopped beating. It was the end of an era, and we all felt it. As if time had suddenly come to a halt, Sunday, August 8, 2021. The saddest day in Barcelona's modern history. Camp Nou, empty, silent, grey. No chants, no applause, only tears. Messi walked into the auditorium with his family, Antonella, his kids, his parents, all with their heads down, trying to hold back their tears. When he sat in front of the microphone, the silence was absolute. Not even the camera flashes dared to interrupt. And then he spoke, with a broken voice, with eyes full of tears. Nothing is coming out. I'm blocked.
Un buen día. La verdad que no sé si iba a poder hablar. No me salía nada. Estaba bloqueado, como lo estoy ahora todavía.
Those were his first words. And with them, the whole world broke into tears. The images said it all. The greatest captain in the club's history, emotionally destroyed. The kid who arrived from Rosario at 13 was now leaving without even being able to step on the pitch to say goodbye to his people. Through tears, Messi went over his entire life. The early mornings training at La Masia, the impossible goals, the Champions Leagues, the hugs with Iniesta, Xavi, Suarez, and that unconditional love for Barça. I did everything I could to stay, but it wasn't possible. It wasn't possible. 3 words that still hurt today, because this wasn't a normal farewell. It was the end of a love story, a breakup between the soul and its body. Outside Camp Nou, thousands of people cried in front of his image. Candles, jerseys, banners, flowers. A scene more fitting for a family loss than a football transfer. Thank you, Leo. Come back someday. You are Barça. The messages repeated over and over, written with the same ink used to say goodbye. And while Messi hugged each teammate, Busquets, Jordi Alba, Piqué, the silence became unbearable. It was the closing of a cycle no one wanted to see end. The end of an era that defined modern football. Because that Sunday, it wasn't just a player who left. Joy left. The kid who changed the club's history left. The man who turned dreams into routine left. When he left the room, Messi looked back one last time. A long look. Silent. Eternal. And even though the auditorium emptied, the echo of his words is still there, suspended in the air. This is not a goodbye. It's a see you later. Maybe someday. Maybe when destiny decides. Maybe when Barca's soul beats again. But that day, that August 8, 2021, we all felt the same thing. That football, for a moment, was left without a heart. This wasn't just the farewell of a player. It was the end of an era. The end of a story that marked generations. Because Messi didn't just play football. Messi taught us to love the game. To believe in the impossible. To enjoy art in motion. For more than 20 years, he gave us something money can't buy. Happiness. Every goal, every hug, every tear is part of our history. Yours. Mine. Everyone who grew up watching the number 10 inches the Blaugrana jersey. And even though he no longer wears those colors, his legacy lives in every kid who touches a ball dreaming of being like him. It lives in every goal scream that carries his name. And above all, it lives in us. In the CULÉS who never stopped believing. Because Barça can change presidents, players, coaches, but Messi will be eternal. His magic doesn't leave. It only changed stages. If this video made you relive Messi's magic, give it a like, subscribe to Barça Cracks, and activate the notification bell. Because Messi left Barça, but his legend is still alive. And here, we keep telling it. Goal by goal. Memory by memory.